Are your brand is that you make people feel amazing things that wants them to do something else. So speaking of such, let's get Madeline up here, let's get Ravi up here, and let's go through Lululemon right from the beginning. Take us over, Madeline. That's it, you got nothing else. Come on, it's Lululemon, for God's sake. One of the greatest companies in the world. That's what I'm talking about.
All right, thank you so much, Brian, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, John, for hosting. Super excited to be here tonight. Sitting down with Ravi. Thank you so much for your time. Super excited to dive into your experience at Lululemon and hear how you took it from a $3 billion valuation to an $11 billion valuation during your time there. So to kick us off, I'd love for you to give a quick intro on who Ravi is.
Yeah, sure. It's slightly frightening doing this behind or in front of a giant version of me, but
Yeah,
it's a little scary. But it's a great smile.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I grew up in Canada, and I did most of my education down in the States.
Okay.
Moved down and then started working in agencies in Boston, and then quickly moved to New York, and then started my career in-house. It kind of flipped all of a sudden to Johnson & Johnson, which was my first
Really?
go in-house, big corporation. I thought I knew everything. I really thought I was the coolest thing
Of
since
course.
sliced bread, and I found out really quickly that I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I got the worst review I'd ever had in my life because I thought I was just telling them what to do with everything because I came from agency. I thought, oh, creative's creative, and
Yeah.
this is how it works. And I got a big lesson in the inner workings of Johnson & Johnson are much bigger than you are, and that R&D is a big part of what they make, and it doesn't matter if you just want to make something a certain color. It has to matter in terms of what the product is, how it works. So I got a complete education, and I really did get my ass handed to me.
Of course.
Hardcore. But I really learned at that point what it is to really understand a business, and then understand how a brand and branding and creative can actually bring that business to life.
Absolutely.
So after that, I was then able to move to Starwood, and I headed up creative for Starwood for about 5 years. And it was an incredible time because that was actually when I learned truly what branding was, because it was a full 360 experience. So if you imagine branding a hotel is everything from the lighting to the scent, the sheets, and then of course, most of all, the service.
Yeah, so the whole experience.
It's the entire experience, and what people don't totally realize, they just think, oh, you made an ad for them, or you made a poster, or it's a coaster, or whatever. It's not.
Yeah.
It's actually the full foundation of that brand is truly about how that brand makes you feel while you're in it, and then after you've left.
Absolutely.
So it was a huge education for me there because it was about the full 360, and I really hadn't thought about it before. I always just thought it was the things that you make and the things that people would see from a photograph to an ad or a commercial, and it was really when I realized it's the full thing. Mm-hmm. So that actually, skipped a few years to a couple startups and things, got me to Lululemon.
Yeah.
And I had zero apparel background.
Okay, so tell me how this opportunity came about. How do you
I'm actually seeing Ben over there. I worked with at Lululemon. He headed up men's product for a long time. But
Hey, Ben.
hey, Ben. And he was one of the people that interviewed me.
Crazy.
I think he liked me. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, so tell us, how did that opportunity come about? How do you get in a position like this with no apparel background?
It's really incredible. And so this is a crazy story. And
Okay.
being in LA, I now believe a little bit more in woo-woo stuff.
Of course.
And it's taken me a while, having lived in New York for 15 years. I was like, there's no such thing. But coming into LA, I'm like, no, woo-woo's a thing. Like, there's energy.
It's the Venice way.
There's the Venice way.
Absolutely.
So I had met a guy named David Rubin years ago, like when he was the CMO of Pinterest. He's currently the CMO of the New York Times. I had a coffee with him when he was at Pinterest. And for whatever reason, we just kept in touch. Emailed about his kids, about my kids, where we moved, jobs we'd taken, things like that. And the recruiter had talked to David Rubin, and David recommended me for the job. I've never worked with David at all, but he did it on the merit of what he thought I was like as a human being, and then also the career that I had taken on.
Yeah.
So it was this wild thing, and I always tell people, it's like, if there's someone like offering you a meetup for coffee, a drink, food, whatever, just take it. Because you just don't ever know when that's going to come into play.
Yeah.
And when an opportunity will strike, and either when you need it or you don't. And at the time, I had lost my job. I was working at a startup called Lyric. It was a hospitality company, and COVID hit.
Yeah.
So all the small businesses were wiped, and I just sat there going, I don't know what's going to happen, and because no one's doing anything
Right.
that's in hospitality, and even some of the businesses that I was interested in were just not a thing anymore. So in many ways, this energy happened. We got connected. David is still, to this day, I have conversations with him every few months we just connect. And he's also been a huge mentor for me as well. And those guys,
Amazing.
New York Times is.
So he just randomly recommended you for this role when asked?
Yeah, they said, who would you recommend? I have this role at Lululemon, who would you recommend? He's like, oh, Ravi. And he told it to them like that too. And I was like, dude, we literally never worked together. So, but we've had many conversations. So it's just so important, all those connections and the networking and even things like this, that it's just so important to be involved and make the connections and just talk to people.
And have each other's back. How can we refer each other? How can we push each other to the next level? Who would be a good fit for this?
Yeah, it's the same with about 2 months ago, I just reached out to Nathan Barber, who's the head of brand for Lucid Motors.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and I was like, the EV's an incredible category, and I thought Lucid was an incredible brand, and I just reached out on LinkedIn to said, hey, what's up? Do you want to just grab a call? And yeah. He's like, for sure. And actually his line to me was brand people unite.
Yep.
And I was like, exactly. Same thing with, her name was Michelle, and I feel terrible now not remembering her name. But she's the head of brand for GE Aerospace. I randomly reached out, and she's like, yeah, I'd love to talk.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God, there's all these people sitting around that are actually waiting for a phone call to just have a conversation with people.
Yeah. Well, it helps when you have a really good LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt, yeah.
Well, very cool. So, question for you, since you have someone in the room that has actually interviewed you before. So during that interview, what do you think made you stand out after you had the recommendation? What did you do in that interview that helped you land that position?
I don't totally know. You might have to ask Ben. But I think, I did actually. It's funny. I did look. Ben, you'll find this funny. I did look at the email, literally today. Because I knew he was coming. At the email that I had sent him after the interview, and I had asked a bunch of questions about what would make this role work. And I remember very distinctly I think what we connected on was just the idea of openness and creativity. And I remember there was one line he said in there, is like coming from a place of we, not I. And I do think there was a connection to be made in that collaboration is really key. And especially when it comes to branding, I do think it's a big deal to be as connected as you can to all the other stakeholders, right? Because especially when you're building brands like this, there's a lot of voices, and there's a lot of people that you need to connect to, and so it's really important to be friends with everyone, and of course be friends to a certain point. Like there are certain things that are rights and wrongs, but one thing that I maintain for sure, and especially at Lululemon, if you're looking at a brand that's that size and knowing when you're scaling to that size, the scale that was happening, right, you went from 3 billion to 11, is massive and it's fast. And so where you're seeing a lot of the like upward trajectory is in China. So my relationship with the Chinese team, though it was very tough sometimes, was very connected. And then it got even more connected when when I created a creative team in Shanghai to be a lot more connected to us creating a more consistent voice. But being connected to those leaders in the different regions was like probably at least a fourth of the job. So it's just having the one-on-ones, it's understanding the issues that people are going through, and then we'd always ask, like, what are the things you need from me? Because people can look at it as like a top-down type thing from my seat in global brand, but it's actually more bottom. So you're actually sitting there being the receiver of like, what does actually everybody need? How can I solve that for you? To make something that I believe was quite successful in terms of being a brand that is, globally consistent, locally relevant, right?
Yeah.
What are the levers you can give people? But that's only being found through understanding.
And do I have this right? Are you Lulu's first global executive creative director?
Yes, like in terms of us having a global brand team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite a job because the entire team was just being created.
Yeah.
So Nikki was my boss, and then we had a few others heading up marketing, brand experience, sports marketing, etc. But they were all creating this, global brand team, which in some respects, I think a lot of people were saying, you have no business to be here. You don't understand the brand. And it was also really tough because that was created in COVID. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's so essential about Lululemon is the community aspect.
Yeah.
And then you hit COVID and there's no community in the same sense, right? You'd have to do it digitally. And that's a big challenge to actually do that digitally. So instead, we had to find ways to get people connected through Zooms, big meetings, big listening sessions, things like that, until finally we could get to a place where we were actually creating the community event. So when you look at some of the more recent work, like the Yet campaign, and then the Live Like You're Alive work from last year, it was actually all about IRL and building like community events. In fact, most of the media dollars that were top of funnel media dollars were pulled down and then pushed into community events.
Very cool. Could you elaborate a little bit more about what's going on with some of those recent campaigns? I know we have some clips I would love to get queued up that kind of highlight some of his projects. So if we can make that happen, that would be great. In the meantime, if you would like to tell us a little bit about some of those campaigns, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I'll probably say that one of the big things while there was a little bit of a lack of understanding of what that brand foundation was. So most of the time that we had spent in my first couple of years there was actually building that brand foundation. It was super difficult because you've got a group of people that have been there for 17 years, and you got a group of people that have been there for like a few. So you're building something to create that evolution of the brand. what's critical, and it was the same thing in hotels, was that everyone understands the brand from top to bottom, right? So in hotels, it's basically from marketing all the way to the person that's cleaning the room has to understand the brand foundation, the pillars, the values, et cetera, to a T, all the way down to service. The same thing had to happen with like Lululemon, because as I said, you've got like the East on a runaway train, where you've got Korea, Japan, China, moving in ways and moving at a rate that is just so fast. The number of stores they're opening a year, a quarter.
Hey, Ravi?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be cool if we actually saw the Yet campaign up there? And I think
Yes.
people would
Yeah,
then
there's
get
a bunch
really
of
good
them,
fun.
and like, yeah,
Let's do that. Let's bring up, hey, John, can you bring up the Yet campaign? And then that way Ravi can talk around that, because I think it's an awesome campaign.
Perfect.
I think there's a bunch of them here. You can probably see the evolution of some of the things that we built. Yet's like the last one. I don't know if there's any sound. No sound.
Do we have sound? Bottom right, muted in the video. Maybe we could click that.
It's the opposite from the top left, if you're struggling. Got this, man. You got this. There's only 150 people looking at you.
Bottom right. Drag it off, drag it off.
The other bottom.
There we go.
It's coming. Here we go. Beautiful. Well done.
A woman's foot. A woman's wire forefoot, shallow big toe foot. A woman's, no, it's not a smaller version of a man's foot. A woman's foot has been stuck in men's shoes for too long. A woman's steeplechase chasing, high achieving, world champion, boundary pushing, think I can go faster foot. A woman's foot. A woman's load-bearing, child-bearing, mild-bearing, find your bearings flexible, fight and show up those runner's toes. I can do this all day foot. Every woman's foot deserves a shoe made for women first.
There's another one after this. It depends on if we want to watch all of them.
Yeah, do we want to pause right now and then talk a little bit about this campaign before we jump in the other?
Yeah, we can. I mean, basically that was launching the first running shoe at Lululemon, and it was focused on a women's runner. So normally, most running shoes, as they say, is like they call it a shrink it and pink it, right? So there's a thing called a last. So I'm not going to get
Shrink it to pink it?
shrink it and then pink it.
Tell us what that means, please.
So it was a phrase that actually came out of Nike, and it was a common practice for a lot of like sports apparel brands to take what they call a last, and a last is the mold of the or the model of the shoe, right? So it's taken off of the anatomy of a foot,
Okay.
and that actually shapes like your shape and form of a running shoe. So what brands don't normally do is invest in both a men's last and a women's last, because the anatomy is different for women versus men. So the investment was actually saying, we're going to invest fully in a woman's last and make a woman's only shoe. And anatomically, it actually fits a lot better. So that was the whole like idea of this, is saying, hey, we're going to actually commit to this, and we're not the first ones to do it, but the ones to do it really at scale.
Right.
And so you're seeing a commitment there in terms of millions of dollars to hold on to, really the structure of that woman's shoe. And so this was about that. And it was really about the idea of like women actually deserving it. Because you've got a whole history of like women athletes that have not been seen. And then shortly after this, we also did the Further event. So the Further event was built off of this, the second run of what was called the Blissful shoe. And we kind of coined this idea of saying Lululemon for your feet because we were trying to really capture the current guest, Lululemon guest, and the female guest. If you know what Lululemon feels like, it's the comfort, fit, the softness, the feel, you're going to really appreciate what the shoe feels like. So we did a Further event in the next year that was kind of where this trajectory started. And it was 10 women in the desert running about a 2.5-mile lap, but it was an ultra marathon that went for 6 days straight.
Oh, wow.
And it was fucking cool. And it was women that, like Camille Heron, who runs ultra marathons all the time, down to Vrico, who barely ran 5K. But I can't remember the number that she pulled off in the end, but it was nuts. And then Camille broke 13 world records during that time. And it wasn't just about the shoes, it was also about the apparel. So as they were going through, they would get tested. So there was a whole like X-ray area where they would actually get tested for how they were performing. They had certain bra fits, certain short fits. There was a onesie that you could actually like go to the bathroom in really quickly for women, which is very difficult to do. And so you've got this whole testing environment, but again, an event that brings it to life. And I think that's the other thing where you're really not just focused on how you're speaking about the product, but you're focused on how you're proving that the product is actually quite incredible. And that's actually like the most important thing, right? But that's a way that you bring the brand to life through an event that actually demonstrates the quality of the product and also in that case, the commitment to women and female athletes and seeing what people can do with their bodies that they just couldn't imagine. So that was the beauty of that event and where this whole thing started. And you can see then how you're doubling down on the brand to go like there is a commitment to female athletes. There's a commitment to firsts. And that was a way to say, here's an ad, but here's how we're actually going to bring it to life in a meaningful way.
That's amazing. So I know Lulu kind of took off a little bit more as a women's first athleisure line, but also I've heard so much praise lately about men, specifically in finance, starting to wear those pants. It's such a movement.
The finance bro.
The finance bros with the Lulu pants, right?
Yeah.
So what did it take to have that shift and to target a completely different demographic?
I mean, it's amazing. It's like I think the thing is, and this is actually where Ben would speak to it even better than I would. But I think the idea that, and it's funny because things shifted, right? What we even started seeing in the data was that what started off as like women buying for men first shifted pretty quickly, and started moving to men buying for men. So even I think there's another ad in here that it can show men ripping their pants off. But it was really about this idea of like giving them awareness that we even had like pants for them. And so you actually had to shift the way that you were marketing towards them. So at first it was like really focused on marketing, towards women and capturing the male audience. And then starting to bring more like male ambassadors in that I think also spoke to the idea of like who the brand was, right?
Yeah.
It's not a hardcore like do it all like crush walls kind of brand. So you've got to bring ambassadors and people that are doing things that fit in that sense.
Yeah.
And it was actually kind of interesting because we brought, Lewis Hamilton was the big win last year and bringing him into the brand and having worked with him, he's just an incredible soul. So you're trying to find folks that like can personify the brand in that way, bring you more reach, but also do it in a way where it's still authentic.
Of course.
And I remember like even pitching him, and it was he was super annoying because he's like kind of the perfect guy, and you know, it's actually interesting to see him not race that well last year.
Yeah.
But you know, different car. But I think what's interesting is I sat there and I told him, I was like, man, you know, I really am I'm not a big runner, and I really kind of don't like it. And he says, oh, I love it. And I said, I'm sure you do. He's like, yeah, in fact, I love it so much. I love actually running in the rain. And I love feeling the rain on my face and my body as I'm running. And I was like, is there anything you don't like or anything you don't do? If you don't do, I mean, this guy was just unbelievably annoying, but also unbelievably like soulful at the same time.
Right. So he was a huge a player for one of these major campaigns.
He was huge, and we brought him in for Meadowvent. He's got a kit that was just released last quarter, and then he's part of the Yet campaign. And I think Yet's really amazing because we took the idea and we wanted to actually double down on the brand itself and what the brand means and its purpose, which is actually originated from yoga. And we wanted to bring this like yoga mindset back up to the forefront. So there's this idea that's out there of, you know, it's very easy to say can't, won't, should have, all of those things. But when you start to add yet to the end of it, you know, I can't do 50 push-ups yet. You end up being in a growth mindset.
I love that.
Yeah, and so we wanted to bring that back because I felt like a little bit of it was lost in the brand. Because of all that massive growth, you can easily get lost. And so we wanted to bring that brand purpose back to play. And that's how we did it. We brought this Yet campaign in. And so there's some creative that goes with it. You can hear Lewis Hamilton talk about his Yet. And his Yet was ridiculous. It was I haven't climbed Mount Everest yet. And I'm like, dude, no one's going to resonate with that because that's too big. But what he started to change that to was I haven't climbed that mountain yet.
Did you have a Yet?
I haven't run a 5K yet, and that's in my goal. It's gonna happen.
You got to train with your daughter.
I mean, she runs 5Ks all the time.
Come on, Tootie.
She's a little bit intimidating. Yeah, it's a little rough.
Yep.
She runs like 6 something, and I'm like, I can barely get to a 10. But we got him to be vulnerable too about talking about his Yet, and I thought that was really cool, and also talking about like you might head up the mountain and come all the way back down, but you're not far from actually getting back up again. And it was really nice to hear him actually talk about it that way and be vulnerable and allow a lot of other ambassadors to do the same. So we actually built the Yet Studio, and then a lot of the other partnerships that we had were with a bunch of other studios across the country, across the world, to create Yet Studios. So that people can come in.
Experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, you know, we started to shift the storytelling to make it actually more one-on-one, to make it more intimate, to make it more connected, and bring it to life in a way that would resonate with people on the ground. Mm-hmm. Because that is kind of what, you know, is the secret sauce of Lululemon, is that community piece. And I think what people, especially right now, are looking for are those like in real life events, right? It's like we're all stuck scrolling. It's so easy.
Way too much.
And being connected back to the brand and being connected to other people is really critical. And this Yet Studio was our opportunity to kind of do that. And we started it really last year with our Live Like You're Alive campaign, which was really just, we brought like Joe McDonald in, who's a 78-year-old influencer.
Crazy.
Also to talk about there is no perfect time to get moving. It could be any time.
Anytime.
But just invite people to the joy of movement. And she was a great expression of doing that. So that alone brought up this whole campaign and got great feedback from it. was really impressive to watch people get inspired by that. And then we did events around that too. So there was a roller skating event at Bottle Rock. We did a summer house in the Hamptons. In China, they did one of the largest yoga events in Beijing, and brought all of our key ambassadors over there to be connected in the practice of yoga. So it's very, very cool. But I think the main thing is like really understanding how important the brand is in that, and how important it is to have a really good understanding of your purpose, really good understanding what the brand stands for, and then to have that be played out in terms of how the community is connected to that.
Absolutely. So that kind of leads me into my next question
Yeah.
here. So Lululemon was one of the first companies to kind of come in and make an impact for everyday athleisure wear. Now that more competitors are coming in, how do you think this affects the market?
Oh, it is crazy. I mean, it's you've got Fiore, you've got Aloe, and I think what people are finding again is, and this is where I think you've got to double down. You've got to for Lululemon in particular, reduction of SKUs, focusing on the quality of the product, and then focusing on what the brand stands for and how the product supports that, and vice versa.
Yeah, of course.
Both of those things have to play into each other. I think the doubling down on performance, doubling down on the quality of the product is really, really critical. And then, of course, like the biggest thing for me is that aspiration is always a thing. If there's anything that doesn't frickin' change, it's that people aspire to something. People aspire to create an identity, right, for themselves. And the beauty of like fashion and apparel is that your body is the thing that allows you to help to create that identity. So you have to actually double down as well on what is that aspirational target that you're looking at. How do you bring that to life? And is your brand embodying it in every possible way? It's really difficult in retail because you've got concrete space to deal with. And once you get into like the thousands of spaces to deal with, it's a conundrum. So you've got to like try as hard as you can to like keep moving the needle and making sure that it's always based in your brand, the product is king, and that the two things are one and the same. If they're not, it's a loss, and then you're gonna feel it. And I think as we were talking about before, it's like, it takes years to build trust. It takes moments to lose it. And if you're not really laser focused on that brand and the product and the two things being together and having a really solid relationship, it'll show up that way. And so that's the thing, is that when the market's getting flooded with all these other types of brands, you have to really go back to your roots and then think through, what is it that makes us different? What is it that we stand for? Is the quality of the product speaking to all of those things that we stand for? Are the types of products that we're making actually appropriate? I think, there was a moment, I think it was, to me, a little bit of a canary in a coal mine when we had an alpaca sweater. And I was like, I don't understand why Lululemon would make the alpaca sweater. Cool is an incremental thing, but you have to look at that and go, does that actually fit the model?
The brand.
Does it fit the brand?
Mm-hmm.
Is that connected to our purpose? Is that connected to who we are and what we stand for? And, it's pretty easy to go for those incremental sales, but you've got to, after a while, it starts to soften the edges so far that your audience will know.
So did y'all scratch that?
No, it came out, and I think it did decently well. I don't know, and it was, but I think, and there's lots of things that did decently well, and I think that's also the point, is that there are plenty of things that you can like create and make, and if they're on trend, sure, they'll do decently well. But what happens is it starts to unravel the brand, and it's a slow burn until all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, oh shit, like this isn't working anymore. Why? Oh, you started to erode trust. Because now I don't know why I'm coming to you. So it's a huge learning, and especially as like anyone's growing their brand and scaling, you've got to like really hold true to the heart and soul of the brand, and also the heart and soul of the product that brings that to life, right? As soon as that starts to move, you might not see it at first, and I think that's the thing. It's one of the things you wake up to. And then you're going, oh, wait, why is the needle not moving in the right direction anymore? And if you look back and you look at the breadcrumbs, you'll start to see like, oh, that's where that was happening.
Yeah. Okay, so last question for you. So there's a lot of people out here that are building like CPG brands and entering a very competitive market. So if you have like any advice or learnings, like what would you leave with everyone in this room today?
I would say the biggest thing is the quality of your product has got to be incredible, and build your brand. Build it. Build the foundation of it. Build what the purpose is. Build the meaning. There is never a moment even when I had worked in startups, where I didn't start there. Let's go, great, I understand the product. Let's make sure the brand is also one and the same as that product, and we're all speaking the same language. The foundation has to be rock solid. And I would also say the way that you're executing it also has to be rock solid. All those things have to be connected, but I cannot express like how important that foundation of your brand is. It's just, it's everything.
It's the backbone.
It is, and even when I worked in tech, and it was the same thing. It was the backbone. It was like, what's the thing that everyone here is rooting for? What are they all supporting? It can't be one team, right? There is no like one marketing team that's just like, oh, this is what the brand stands for. It doesn't matter what you all think.
Yeah.
It's the entirety.
Right.
So the brand foundation is really critical. What's the product? Why are you making it? How is that connected to the brand?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ravi.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, guys. Okay, in a moment, we're going to bring up Josh, and we're going to bring up Jasmine, and we're going to bring up Emma. This is a really important panel. Thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you again. You're awesome. Okay, so it was funny. When I asked a couple of moments ago, and by the way, anyone who hasn't heard the story of Sugarfina, you want to hear this. You don't want to miss it, because there's a lot of thought process out there.